Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, one-on-one on US FDA medical device regulations. My name is Marco Theobald. I'm the Principal Regulatory Specialist here at Registrar Corp, and I will co-present that webinar with my colleague, Cindy Valenzona. She is the manager of our medical device team.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
We will just give you a little bit update on the agenda, what we have put together for you today. So, of course, we will have a couple of words about the US Food and Drug Administration, very short. Then we will dive into medical devices. So, of course, what is the definition that FDA is using, how they define a medical device, and then also how medical devices are classified. The next topic will be the establishment registration. That goes to what kind of function is really pushing you into the direction to need to have a registration of your establishment, and what are also the exemptions. We will shortly and brief really talk about unique device identifier. That is a very, very broad topic, and we will have an upcoming webinar just focusing on that. So this is just the bare core that we will present on that topic today. Then we will talk about a little bit about label versus labeling. What is the difference for the FDA? And also what we get a lot is the use of the FDA logo. So we will talk about these topics. Then there's also another one. What is a small business application / small business number? We hope we can give you some additional or also new information about that and how you possibly can save some money on that one. Then we will talk about additional requirements for certain medical devices. There are some kind of overlaps to other regulations into the drug world or into radiation emitting devices. And at the end, we will give you, of course, a short overview about Registrar Corp services, what we can do, how we can support you to be in compliance and also to stay in compliance. And of course, the last point, it's not on the agenda, but we will have a question and answer round as well. And we will try to answer as many questions as possible. Let us start with the US Food and Drug Administration. Very short, the Food and Drug Administration was established with the mission to protect consumers from unsafe food and drugs. In June 1906, President Theodore Roosevelt signed into law the Pure Food and Drug Act. But over the years, it was really coming into the lawmakers' attention that that act was not sufficient really to protect consumers. So in 1938, President Franklin Roosevelt signed still what we are using today, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, into law. And the biggest change of that was the new law significantly increased federal regulation authority over drugs and food and cosmetics to protect consumers. A very, very important point here was that FDA was no longer in charge to prove fraudulent intent of a product or a company. So FDA could really, based on scientific data, deny marketing of a drug, for example. And since then, there were a lot of more regulations and changes coming. So as of today, the FDA is really responsible for food drugs, including veterinary drugs, blood products, biologics, vaccines, cosmetics, medical devices, radiation emitting devices, and tobacco products. I just have a couple of links here if you like to dive a little bit closer into the FDA topic. The first one is called from the FDA, the Chamber of Horror, and that explains what happened between the Pure Food Act and then the new act in 1938. What happened in between that time? It's a very short video, but kind of interesting why and what was going on at that time. The next two videos, also smaller videos from the FDA as well, are talking about what is approved by FDA and what is not approved. And background of that, and we will talk about a little bit more about these terms during our presentation, is really the use of the right terms. We very often hear from our clients or prospects that with the, for example, registration of their facility, they use the word, oh, we have registered our facility, now we are approved by the FDA. And that is not the case. With these two videos, you will get a better understanding what it really means when we are talking about an approval from the FDA and also what is not approved by the FDA. So the next topic is really now the medical devices and their classification. Let's start with the definition. The definition of a medical device is very similar to other agencies around the world, and I will not read that back. That is really the official FDA definition. I will summarize that a little bit in my own words. So a medical device is something that is used in the diagnosis or in the treatment or prevention of a disease. And it affects the structure or function of the body. However, and that is a very, very important point, the primary intended purpose is not reached through chemical actions. And that means no chemical action is needed on your skin, on your body, or in your body, means something needs to be metabolized. If that is really needed to bring in the effect that you want to see, we are talking about a drug. A medical device is never kind of a chemical reaction in the body or on your skin, on the body. Of course, medical background here is if you have a specimen taken from your body, like blood or something else, like saliva, and that gets tested, that is outside of the body, that is in a lab, and the chemicals or the devices that you need for that, that would fall under really medical devices. But if the primary function is that chemical reaction in your body, then we are talking about a drug. Here we have some examples of medical devices, and that is a wide range that starts with very simple things like a cotton swab that you can use as an applicator to apply something or to take specimens from a body, over a toothbrush, dental floss, band-aid, pregnancy test, catheter, x-ray machine, or a wheelchair, and on and on and on. There is a wide variety of medical devices. Interestingly, also you see the sunglasses here. That's a little bit kind of an outlier. There are not many agencies in the world that have sunglasses as a medical device. But if you are dealing with sunglasses here in the US, if you manufacture them, if you really import them, you are dealing with a medical device and you have to follow the medical device regulations to stay in compliance. Medical device classification. So the FDA has really grouped medical devices based on their risk. And the FDA regulates medical devices in the US to assure their safety and effectiveness. The FDA is using the product classification database. That is a public database. And if you are not sure about your device, what class it would fall into, you can use the database to do research. There are over 6,000 types of medical devices grouped, and every or FDA is using the word product classification. These are defined by a 3-letter code. So it's called a product code. The 3-letter code, as an example, DXQ would define a blood pressure cuff. Also, for example, the sunglasses, they have also a 3-letter code. It would be HQY. Depending on the device classification, along with other factors, federal regulations such as the Code of Federal Regulations Title 21 define requirements that must be fulfilled to approve or clear a device before you can sell that in the United States. We will talk a little bit more later, really, what is behind the word approve and clear. What is the difference? So please give me a second to go through the slide, and then we will clear that out. Each of these generic types of devices is assigned into one of 3 regulatory classes, class 1, 2, or 3. And that is based on the control that is necessary to assure the safety and also the effectiveness of a device. The device classification depends on the intended use and also on the indication of use. And the most important thing for the FDA is really what is the risk that a device presents to a patient or during a treatment to the patient. How risky is that device, and based on that, it will fall in one of these 3 categories. So these are the 3 categories: class 1, class 2, class 3. We have only 3 here in the US. Other agencies like Health Canada, they have 4, or in Europe, they have technically also 4 because they have a class A and a class B. So it depends on the agency that you are dealing with, how many classes you will see. Class 1 here in the US is the lowest risk class, and you have general controls applying to these devices, which most likely is records and files that you need to have present. A lot of these low-risk devices are exempt from a pre-market notification, or also the other word you might have heard about it is a 510K. We will talk a lot about exactly what that is and what that means on the next slides. So just wait a little bit. Examples of a 510K exempt class 1 devices would be the sunglasses, the bandage, or the dental floss. However, there are a couple of devices, even in the class 1, that would require a 510K. And examples for these devices would be examination gloves, mechanical wheelchair, or oral lubricant. Then we have class 2, where also there's an additional level of controls coming in. In the US, it's called special controls for class 2. and special because they are applying to certain devices or specific to a device, kind of a device. We have the moderate risk here. Most of class 2 devices are not exempt, but still you will find also 510K exempt devices under the class 2. However, not exempt and requiring a 510K into the class 2 would be a glucose monitor kit or a pregnancy test kit. 510K exempt, but still in class 2 and also during production with special controls would be devices like a mercury thermometer, hospital bassinet, an AC-powered adjustable hospital bed. So these are moderate risk class devices, but they do not longer require a 510K. And then we have class 3, which is really the highest risk class. And besides the general controls, you need to have a pre-market approval to sell a class 3 product here in the US. And that is really where we use the word approval. Class 3 devices are approved by the FDA. This is the highest risk class. There are no exemptions in class 3. And typical devices that would fall under class 3 are surgical laser, automated insulin dosaging systems. And what is so really unique about the pre-market approval, it is based on the FDA, and their discretion means the valid scientific evidence that you have to provide to FDA to prove that your device is safe in use and also effective. Effective means that you show to the FDA the intended use or your indications are that, and it is safe to use and it's doing what it should do. So you have to come up with these proofs and data. FDA is going over the data. If the data is fine, FDA will approve your device for the market in the US. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about what does it mean if it's 510K exempt. So all devices classified as exempt are still subject to the limitations of that exemption. And these limitations are really specified and covered under 21 CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations. And just wanted to use one example to give you a better idea what that means. So I picked one product code here, PHV, and that product code covers a continuous glucose monitor data management system. Now, the definition or identification says a continuous glucose monitor data management system is an electronic device intended to acquire, process, and correlate retrospective data from a continuous glucose monitoring device. This device is intended to be used by patients on their healthcare providers when determining therapeutic strategies. A continuous glucose monitor data management system is not a drug dose calculator or does not provide treatment recommendations. So that is clearly the limit. If your system is doing that, means it is used to calculate the dosage, or it is used or gives you treatment recommendations, then that is not the product code you should use. And hopefully that gives you an idea about what is called the limitations of a 510K. if your device is classified as class 1 or class 2 and it's not exempt, a 510K will be required for marketing. So what is really a pre-market notification or 510K? It's an application submitted to the FDA to demonstrate that the device is at least as safe and effective, means substantially equivalent as a legally marketed device in the US. So that is also the big difference between a pre-market approval and a 510K. A pre-market approval often really includes clinical trials and data. That is not the case. I mean, you can use them, it's not forbidden, but it is not really required. As long as you can really provide that information and show with data that your device is at least as safe and effective. It might be better as something that is on the market, but it needs to be at least safe and effective. So you need really to compare your device with something that is on the market. Most likely companies are using a competitor device that is as close as possible and that they know very well. In some other cases, you might also be able to use a 510K that you had previously and used maybe a couple of years earlier, and now you have developed a new device, or you have really applied new technology, or you extend the intended use of a device, then you might can use your old 510K and as the comparison device for these 510K application. There are also, and what I'm talking about at the moment, it's really called the traditional 510K. There are also subsets of 510Ks. Very popular in the last couple of years is the de novo 510K from FDA. And that is a kind of special 510K that came up because not for every device there might be an already cleared device on the market. Specifically, when you're looking and thinking about the development of technology, and you're looking around and you say, hey, nobody is using that kind of technology in that device. There's nothing on the market. And as long as your device stays in the moderate risk base, you can use that de novo pathway, which is also called de novo 510K, to get your clearance. Before marketing a device, each submitter must receive an order, and that is the clearance of your application. So the FDA clears with a 510K your device, and when you have that letter, you are good to go into commercial distribution. Really, to make that 100% clear, if you send in your application, you still have to wait on that clearance letter before you can start selling your device here in the US. 510K number is an alphanumeric number that starts with a capital letter K followed by 6 digits. So, for example, K251209. That's the typical 510K number. And I like also to talk a little bit about software. Software is also kind of a complicated topic, and the devil lies in the detail. So like to start with what is device as, or when software is called really a medical device. What's the definition of that? And by the International Medical Device Regulators Forum, software intended to be used for one or more medical purposes that perform these purposes without being part of a hardware medical device. So the definition is kind of a little bit weird, and I like to give you an example here. An example for software as a medical device: software that allows a smartphone user to view images obtained from a magnetic resonance imaging device for diagnostic purposes. So that would be really a software as a medical device. An example for software that is not a medical device, that would be software that is used to drive and control the motors or the pumps of a medication or an infusion pump, sometimes referred to as embedded software or firmware. It is not software as a medical device. That software is just used for to drive the pumps. So that is embedded in a device, and that is the difference in between if we are talking about software as medical device or not medical device. Then also, if you are developer of a phone app, because of the really super high number of apps, FDA came up with the definition of general wellness products. General wellness products are defined as products that meet the following two factors. One, they are intended for only general wellness users, as defined in a guidance document, and they present a low risk to the safety of users or other persons. General wellness products may include exercise equipment, audio recordings, video games, software programs, and other programs or products. That being said, as long as, for example, you have an app that is tracking your calories, or like your exercise, how much you move, FDA tries to stay away to control these kind of software. It is a different thing when you are collecting data and these data are really used for diagnosis or treatment. Then we are really going out of the general wellness product field in most cases. But you have to look very close. There is also the link to the FDA guidance document, and where you can find more examples. What is FDA's understanding about general wellness products, and also more about what kind of software would fall under it and is not required really the higher level of medical device compliance. And as a other side talk, everyone is aware that AI is really a hot topic since 2-3 years. And of course, FDA is looking into that as well. There's a lot of discussion going on at the moment. FDA is looking into writing more guidance documents about AI. And that is not only focusing on the use of AI in a software for devices, decision making, in kind of making decisions for therapy or treatments. It's also on the safety aspect, and that is also a very important aspect for the FDA to make it safe. Not only that the AI gives correct information and data, so that there is no risk when you make the step or the move over to a therapy or something like that. It is also to protect that AI from external access from people that shouldn't have access to the software or to data in the software. So there's a lot of things that FDA at the moment is looking into, and I think with the right people, you could do another webinar just on these topics. But that is definitely too much for our overview. The next point is the establishment registration. So who needs to register, list, and pay the FDA user fee? That mainly is driven by your function, what you are doing. And if you have, or if you fulfill certain functions with your company, like manufacturing, then you need to register your establishment. Coming with the establishment registration, you have also at least to do one listing. You need to list one product. That is how FDA has set up the software. You cannot just do a registration of your establishment without having at least one product listed. Software does not allow it. That is given by the FDA, how they have programmed the software. And also with the registration of your establishment, at the same time, there is an FDA user fee required. And without paying that user fee upfront, you cannot finish your establishment registration. On that slide, I have really put in for the most common functions the FDA definition, what FDA understands behind the manufacturer, contract manufacturer, repackager, what is a foreign exporter, initial importer. I like to point out two things here. One is the initial importer. That is the only function where you do not need to do listings. So when you do the registration of your establishment and your only function is initial importer, then the software lets you proceed with the registration without doing a listing. The second thing I like to point out is most likely how the industry is using some terms that have a different meaning in the regulation. So, for example, contract manufacturer. The regulation says manufactures a finished device to another establishment's specifications, including contract packages, domestic and foreign. But the industry is usually also using the word contract manufacturer in the case the manufacturer is really the person who established the device specification. They are just putting another company's name, brand name on the device and sell it to them. So that is most likely where things sometimes get a little bit of confusion or can create confusion between what is really the definition in the regulation or how it is used by FDA and what is the speech that we are using in the industry. Of course, I have also listed other functions that would require registration, like remanufacturing, reprocessing of single-use devices, specification developers, US manufacturers of export-only devices, contract sterilizers, custom device manufacturers, and complaint file establishments as required. And of course, relabelers. So if you do one or multiple of these functions, then in that case, you need to register your establishment if you sell your products on the US market. There are also a couple of exemptions from FDA registration requirements, like the wholesale distributor. Um, that is not a manufacturer or importer as long as you only distribute and you possibly buy your products from a US manufacturer and you sell on the US market, then there is no requirement to register your establishment. Also not required for a registration are specification consultants, refurbisher or remarketers of used devices already in commercial distribution, manufacturer of components that are not otherwise classified as finished devices, and where the component is distributed only to a finished device manufacturer. So you are only making, let's say, part of a device, let's say a case, but that's all what you're doing, and you send that over to the finished device manufacturer who's using the case and to build the complete device. You don't need a registration. Also not required are import agent, customs brokers or brokers. You don't need to register. Domestic distributors is a little bit similar to, or similar situation to the wholesale distributors, and the devices investigated under IDE, investigational device exemptions. No registration is required. Let's go very quick over the process. So the first step should be always you pay the FDA user fee. If you do that online, you have to create a user fee account with the FDA. And if you do that by credit card, usually it takes 24 to 48 hours to get your payment confirmed. And the actual user fee is $9,280. That applies to every physical location where you are manufacturing medical devices for the US market. So if you have 2 locations and you produce in both locations finished medical devices that are going to the US market or here in the US, you have to pay that amount twice per location. And you have also to register every physical place. So that means you have 2 registrations, not one. You cannot just go in and say, I register my headquarters. FDA wants to have the physical address where you are really manufacturing, relabeling, where you do other stuff like kit assembling or whatever your business is. That location needs to be registered. Also, you have to designate an official correspondent, and that applies to every registration. Non-US companies on top need to designate what's called an US agent. The US agent must have a US address. The official correspondent, if you are a non-US company, the official correspondent in theory could be a different person and could be someone in your company. Let's say you have your establishment in Italy, that could be someone in Italy. But the US agent needs to be here in the US. That person needs to have a US address. Next step would be the listing of your medical device. And when you go through the establishment registration and listing process, what's called the device listing number is assigned at this process directly. At the moment, nearly all listings start with a D, and then you have also a 6-digit number behind it. In the past, FDA used also a couple of other letters at the beginning. So you will possibly, if you see an older listing, it might have another capital letter at the beginning, but they are rare. Most of them really are starting with a D. What also is given to you during the process, it's called the owner operator number. That is immediately assigned, and after that, your registration and listing process is complete. However, there is still one number open, and that's called the registration number. The registration number is assigned around up to 90 days, specifically if we are talking about non-US companies after your registration. So be patient. FDA will reach out to you. They will send you that number, but it can take up to 3 months before you get it. The background on that is between the date you do the initial registration, FDA reached out and they do a little bit kind of, I would say, background check to confirm your company, and usually they send out or reach out to you with some statistic information that they want to have back, and then they assign you the registration number. But to make that very clear, going forward, when you have the registration number, that is the number, if you're a non-US company, that you should use on the entry documents when you ship your products to the US. But you don't have really to wait 90 days till you can do the first shipment. As soon as you have the owner operator number, you can do shipments under that number. Just tell your customs broker that the registration number is not assigned yet, that you are in waiting position for that. And usually it does not really give any hiccups or delays at the port of entry. As long as the customs broker is aware your owner operator number and that you are waiting for the registration number, you are good to go. That being said, with finishing your establishment registration, that also can trigger inspections going forward at any time. And with any time, I mean really any time. So inspections can occur as soon as the establishment is registered and listed with the FDA. The FDA conducts medical device establishment inspections worldwide to ensure compliance with applicable laws and regulations. Means they are looking if you have all the GMPs in place, if you keep records and all that paperwork. Inspections are typically conducted as pre-approval inspections before a new device is approved for market. You have the routine surveillance inspections, regulatory scheduled to ensure ongoing compliance. And of course, you have for-cause inspections, and they are usually triggered by specific concerns or complaints about the device or a manufacturer. The frequency and timing of these inspections can vary based on the risk associated with the device and the compliance history of your establishment. To add a little bit to that, so if you have or you only deal with class 1 devices, yes, you will see inspections, but if there is no for cause inspections, means that there is any kind of complaints about the quality of your devices, inspections do not really occur on a yearly basis. And even for class 3 devices, it's usually not on a yearly basis, around every 2 years. And then you have the class 2 devices with a 510K, and that should be around every 3 to 4 years, depending also, but it can change anytime given on the course of the inspection. Or you might get kind of lucky that FDA is really in the neighborhood and says, hey, let's stop by because we are just around. So there's a lot of things that can trigger an inspection. And actually, last week, FDA had another announcement. Till now, non-US companies got a little kind of a break here because they got announcement for inspections, let's say in Europe, in China, in India, Japan, Australia, at least 2 to 3 months in advance, so that FDA could really plan the trip, send out the inspector, looking for a hotel, for transportation to really make everything water sealed for that inspection. Last week, FDA announced that they will tighten the screws, and they will go now also more on unannounced inspections for non-US companies. That means non-US companies will no longer have that luxury of the early warning, and that gave them at least a little bit more time to go over the documentation and really give them the little kind of touch that might phase out. I don't know how long the transition will be. There was a pilot project by the FDA, and that was tied to two countries, India and China. And now FDA is really ramping up that kind of unannounced inspections worldwide and changing the rules a little bit more. Here in the US, we have seen out of courtesy sometimes announcements on a late Thursday or early Friday morning that we got calls for our clients saying, hey, please let the client know I will show up Monday morning at 8 or 10. But that was, as I said, more out of courtesy, and we have actually seen that a little bit less in the last 2 years. It happened a little bit more pre-COVID. So I'm not really sure if FDA is really avoiding that in the future completely, but that was our experience with announcement of US and non-US inspections. A couple of words to the official correspondent, the person designated by the owner operator, and there are also some responsibilities coming with that title. The official correspondent is responsible for the annual registration of the establishment or re-registration. It's a contact point for FDA for registration device questions or issues. And the official correspondent also should maintain and submit a list of companies, officers, and directors when requested. Also received of correspondence from FDA for any kind of things like inspection, like also questions about quality management or complaints that FDA might have received about one of your products. Um, the official correspondent also may serve as the US agent if the person is in the US. So you do not have really to split your official correspondent and the US agent responsibility, or to appoint two different people. It's not necessary. You can do it, but you can also combine it to one person as long as a non-US company, your US agent is in the US. A couple of words to the US agent for establishments. It's also you are designated by the owner. Um, there is actually, from the regulation standpoint, a difference between an import agent. That's completely different from what FDA appoints you as the US agent and how they define what you are doing. Foreign establishments must notify FDA of the name, business, phone number, and go on. Even if an establishment manufactures various medical devices, drugs, and biologics products, each establishment can identify only one US agent. You cannot really split that out on different people. There's only one US agent. And we've said it multiple times, must have a business or place of business here in the US. What you cannot do, you cannot use a PO box as an address for your US agent. And you also cannot use an answering only service. The agent must be available to answer the phone during standard business hours. Of course, there might be questions when we get calls from the FDA we cannot answer, but FDA expect us to go back to the company to collect the answers and then provide that. So the US agent is really a link between the FDA and the non-US company for all kind of questions. And also there's a couple of responsibilities coming with that, assisting FDA in the communication. This is really the most important thing. And also what is important, sometimes replies to the FDA are time sensitive, because FDA only gives you a certain amount of days to respond to their request, specifically when you think about complaints about your device. And FDA is reaching out, so they don't give you a ton of time, at least to start the initial correspondence, and they want to have um, ongoing correspondence and answers very, very quick and fast. So you need to have look out for someone that is really reliable and is forwarding every communication that they receive as fast as possible to give you the maximum amount of time to come up with the correct answers, data, and whatever is needed. And Cindy, I'm now turning over to you. My voice gets a little bit rough, and going along with the unique device identifier.
Hi everyone, I hope you guys are still with us. Let's talk about the UDI. Next, please. So, unique device identifier. FDA established a rule to ensure that the medical devices sold in the United States are adequately identified from manufacturing to ultimate consumer or patient use. FDA issued a final rule on September 24, 2013, which requires most medical devices to carry a unique device identifier. So, this is another FDA regulation that is intended to identify medical device. Who is required to comply with UDI? It would be the labeler. The UDI must be placed in a packaging and labels in both plain text, human machine readable form. Next, please. So UDI barcode. UDI consists of two parts, a device identifier and a production identifier. Device identifier is a fixed portion that identifies the version or model of the device, while production identifiers is a variable portion that includes lot number or serial number, batch number, or manufacturer or expiration date. Next, please. So similar to the registration and listing database, a UDI has also a global unique device identification database. A good idea is a publicly searchable database administered by the FDA and the National Institutes of Health that will serve as a reference catalog for every device with an identifier. The DI or device identifier and product specific information is submitted to this database. If you're a labeler and you're submitting your UDI, companies can publicly search your submitted UDI to this database. Next, please. Just to add on that, Registrar Corp is hosting a separate, more in-depth webinar in regards to the UDI, and we encourage everyone, if you guys are interested, to join us to that discussion. We'll be sending an announcement once it's available. So, label versus labeling use of the FDA logo. So, oftentimes companies may get confused about what is considered a label and the labeling, or what is the difference between the two. Per FDA, label is defined as as any written, printed, or graphic matter that is affixed to the device or on its containers or wrapper or that accompanies the device. So the label, if you have a device, this label is the affixed to the device or in the packaging. That includes all the information necessary to ensure the safe and effective use of the device, such as the warnings, instructions for use, or any relevant details. Labeling. The term accompanying is interpreted liberally to mean more than physical association with the product. So, with labeling, that is something that, for example, posters, tags, pamphlets, booklets, brochure, or instructions that are inserted into the packaging. Next, please. So for this is just the example of a compliant label. I believe this is a dental floss on the right hand side. That is an example of a label. Next, please. FDA registered and FDA certified. When you say FDA registered, keep in mind that that does not denote approval, clearance, or authorization of the facility and its medical devices. So if your establishment does not say it's approved, establishment is registered. So that's something that you keep in mind of those wordings to use. Also, the FDA does not issue any type of registration certificates. So if we have companies here who's been seeing a lot of certificates out there, keep in mind that FDA does not issue any registration certificates for registered establishment. Though FDA does have an export certificate. These are issues different types of certificates for different products. The certificates will help facilitate export by assisting industry in fulfilling exporting country requirements for certification by FDA of FDA regulated products. There's, I believe, a CFG certification of foreign government and then the certification of foreign government for non-exported. Next, please. FDA logo. So FDA logo, you cannot use the FDA logo on commercial medical device label. So if you're seeing marketing materials, advertisements out there, FDA prohibits the use of logo. This is the FDA logo is for official use solely for FDA and not used for any private sector materials. Next, please. Small business application or number. So with small business application is defined as a business including its affiliates whose gross receipts and are less than 100 million for the most recent tax year. So if you're one of those businesses that you believe that you will be applicable to apply for a small business, there is a guidance with the FDA that would give you a step by step on how to send the application. Keep in mind that a small business application doesn't apply for registering your establishment. Certified small businesses are eligible for reduced fee for some types of CDRH submission. And again, no reduction of the FDA user fee. That's for the registration of your establishment. One of the examples that may fall under applying for the small business is when you're applying for a 510K or PMA, de novo, or 513G. If you're eligible to apply for small business, currently for 2025, the fee would be 6,084. So if you're not eligible for small business small business fee, you will have to pay the standard fee. For example, for 510K for 2025, it would be 24,335. So that's a big difference between those numbers, and that could really save you a lot of money. Next, please. There's an additional requirements for certain medical devices. One would be the next please, the drug registration and listing, and this mostly applies for combination products, which it has medical device and a drug product. For example, first aid kits containing devices such as bandages, gauze, and including the drugs, which antibiotic ointments or pain relievers, or pre-filled drug delivery systems such as syringes, insulin injector pen, metered dose inhaler. There's also another regulations, the radiation emitting device. This is an electronic devices that might need to comply with radiation safety regulation specified under 21 CFR that describes within this the link below. You guys can click that for more information in regards to the radiation emitting device. Next, please. So now that you already have an overview of the regulation, the functions, activities that you guys are requiring a registration and listing, how can Registrar Corp assist you? Registrar Corp has been assisting for over 20 years, helping thousands of clients navigate various services to ensure compliance with FDA regulation. Registrar Corp can assist you with establishment registration. We can act as the official correspondent and U.S. agent. We will also assist with device listings. We will handle to list your devices. We also provide assistance with UDI guidance and good ID submission. So if you have any UDI submission, we will also assist you with that. We also assist with detention assistance. If you have any medical device reporting that you need to submit, we also assist with EMDR submission. Certificate to foreign government, that's also included. Radiation emitting device reporting service. We also assist with label review. ComplyHub, this is a software developed to assist with regulation requirements. We also provide assistance with consulting hours. For example, if you're curious about how to obtain your small business number, or if you're just curious about if you're eligible, we offer consulting hours. We also provide assistance with drug registration and listing service. And we also provide Health Canada for those who has class 1 medical devices that would need to obtain a medical device establishment license. That's also part of our services. More on that, but if you guys are interested, please reach out to Registrar Corp. All right, I think we ran out of time, but we have some questions. So let's see. Dr. Marco, do you have anything to add?
No, let's go to the questions. I see there is a lot of questions, and let's start with that.
Okay. Okay, so there's one here. Do initial importers and foreign exporters will also need to pay for each manufacturing site of the product to bring into the US? So that's a little, I'm not sure if I understand it, but initial importers require to register as well as foreign exporter and the manufacturer of the device. So foreign exporters requires to list the device that they'll be exporting to the United States, and also manufacturer requires to register and list the device that they'll be shipping to the United States. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, maybe I can add a little bit to that. So you as an importer, you do not have to pay for the manufacturer side. That is maybe something that you as a business partnership can do, but this is not required by the FDA that you pay for that side. It should be really you are only responsible for your side as an importer, and the manufacturer is responsible for their side. We know based on our long years, and we have seen a lot of things, that sometimes also a US importer might pay for the manufacturer, but that is nothing that is required, or there is something in the regulation. This is kind of
Yes,
this decision, and how your relationship is.
like a business agreement. I
Yeah,
know some of the companies they do pay for their customers, but that's really up to the your business.
correct.
Let's see.
I see a question about the small business number. We have a small business number, but no response at the indicated date. How do we get update on the application for the small business number? So the small business number is only good for one fiscal year. And when you are going towards the end of the fiscal year, you need to reply again. That means you have really to go back through the application. You have to provide your last year tax report to the FDA, and FDA will grant you a new number that you can use going forward. So it's really something like the registration that you have to redo every year. I hope that helps you.
So there's one question here also. What is the difference between the FDA certificate and an annual registration certificate? So if you are referring to the establishment registration and listing, keep in mind FDA does not issue any certificate for for registered establishment. If you are registered with FDA, you can if you're thinking about providing a proof that you are registered, you can use a copy of your registration. And your clients can also go to the public database and it shows there that your establishment is registered. If you're referring to the CFG, the Certificate to Foreign Government, that's another certificate, not really related to to any registration certificate or registration and listing certificate. But that the CFG is for export of medical devices that that shows that your product or your device is legally marketed in the US and that it is in compliance with the requirements of FDA.
Cindy, I have an interesting question here about the UDI. So the question reads as following: after receiving the 510(k) application for medical devices, is UDI mandatory during shipments? Um, that depends
That
what
is,
kind of stage your device is that you are shipping. If you are, for example, shipping a finished device, but that is not labeled, so would say you send a finished device, but that is in kind of bulk, then that might be not really required because it is not finished for the consumer. And the labeler means the company who is putting that into the finished sales package with the original label and everything, uh, that should have the UDI. But if you ship in bulk, it might not be really necessary to have a UDI.
there's one more question here. Can a PMA be required for a class 2 product? So that's really depend on what type of your class 2. Most the class 3 devices are actually mostly requires PMA, but it really depends. Dr. Marco, have you seen any class 2 devices that would require pre-market approval?
Usually not, because even if it's new technology, it would really be leveled by the FDA into a class
Mhm.
3 um, device because of the risk. Um, Usually it's just class 2 is moderate. It doesn't require really PMAs. PMAs is really pre-market approval is really for the high risk class 3.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we went over with our time. Do we have time for more question?
I have another one here, and that brings us back to the logo. So I see many times that products have FDA logo on their product next to CE mark. You say it is not legal. What's my move to actually show that product is FDA approved? So that is exactly what we are talking about. only class 3 devices are really approved. But what you mean with approved, you want to tell that your product is in compliance with FDA regulation. And yes, we see that from time to time that the FDA logo is on the product itself on the label. However, we always encourage our clients not to do that. It is possible that shipments with these logos are passing through the port of entry because there is just no way that FDA can open every shipment and look at a label. But if FDA gets aware of it, your shipment will not pass out of the port. If you get lucky and, for example, FDA sees the logo on a shipment, they might grant you a kind of an overhaul of the label. Means you have to send someone in physically and to put a sticker over that label before you can really or FDA will grant the entry onto the US market, and then the product is going onto the shelf. But that is depending on what you have. Just keep in mind you have to open every box, you have to take out every little box that is going on the shelf, and you have to put a sticker on that label. So there is costs and delays, storage fees, manpower. uh, we just always try, don't put a label on it. It is not a good move. um, all I can say to that. Cindy, do you have anything else?
No, yeah, I think that would be all. But if we missed any questions in the chat, um, we will go over it and then we will answer your question in the email.
Yeah, please also feel free. There might be questions coming up later. Use the info at registrarcorp.com email and reach out to us. We are happy to answer all of your questions.
Yes.
Dr. Marco, can you please bring up the slide with the contact details?
Oh, yeah, give me a second.
Oh no, you minimized it already. Uh, no worries. So guys, we will be reaching out to you for the questions that you have asked, and if you need any more answers, responses, if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out at info@registrarcorp.com. It's on the screen. The phone numbers are also on the screen. You could just take them, and yes, it's visible, Dr. Marco. You could take a screenshot and you can reach out. We will be able to respond to those messages to all of y'all right there. Okay, thank you so much for all of your time, and we hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you for attending this session, and please look for an email from our side with answers to all of your questions. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Goodbye.